بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون صدق الله العظيم. The first question received is, what is zakat due on? And please explain how zakat should be calculated, as it is my first year giving zakat. So the first thing to remember is who is zakat farz on. Number one, an adult. So children do not have to pay zakat according to the Hanafi school of thought. Number two, a Muslim. So zakat is not necessary on non-Muslims. Number three, that person who is sane. Therefore, that person who is mental is not required to pay zakat. And then in terms of the actual wealth, there are some conditions. So number one, to be in complete ownership of the wealth. Number two, the wealth has the ability to grow and increase. Number three, the wealth has reached the nisab value. And nisab, as I have previously mentioned, is roughly about 612 point something gram in silver, which is nowadays equivalent to 385 pounds, which will fluctuate according to the rate of silver. And number four, a whole year passes after possessing the nisab. So 1 year should pass. And how we should calculate this, then we should remember. And this is a very, very, very big misunderstanding that lots of people make. And for some reason they think zakat is specific with the month of Ramadan. That the Shariat has specified zakat to be given in the month of Ramadan, where this is not the case. Every person's zakat due date, every person's zakat anniversary date should be and is in reality different to one another. Because the principle is that the first time after you become baligh, after you become mature, after you have your wet dream, the first time that you become the owner of the nisab value, you should make a note of that date. And then the following year, on the same date, if one is still owner of the nisab, then you will be considered to be sahib nisab and zakat will be necessary on you. So for example, let's just have an example. A person becomes baligh on the 1st of Muharram. I didn't use Ramadan as an example on purpose, because that is the misunderstanding we are in, that we think Ramadan is the month in which zakat should be calculated. No. So a person becomes baligh on the 1st of Muharram. And remember, the date that is going to be considered is the lunar year, the Islamic calendar date. So not the English calendar. So for example, a person becomes baligh on the 1st of December. He must now find out what that date is in the Islamic calendar. So a person becomes baligh on the 1st of Muharram. There's two situations. Number one, when he became baligh, he was the owner of nisab. So right now we said 385 pounds. So as soon as he becomes mature, he becomes baligh, he has his wet dream, he is already in the possession of 385 pounds or more. So now that date should be noted, the 1st of Muharram 2023, or 1444 rather. And then next year, Muharram the 1st in 1445, he will see how much money does he have, and whatever the nisab value is at that time on the 1st of Muharram next year. So for example, let's just give an example, it is 400 pounds. If that person on the 1st of Muharram in 1445 is the owner of 400 pound, the nisab that we just made up for that date, then he will have to give zakat. That is the first situation, or the first scenario. The second scenario would be is when he becomes baligh, he becomes mature. At that time or on that day, he is not the owner of the nisab. Later on, it could be 1 month, it could be 1 day, it could be 1 week, whenever later on, after he becomes baligh, the first time that he becomes owner of that nisab value, he will make a note of that date. So he became baligh on the 1st of Muharram, and let's just say on the 1st of, let's just go with any date, Shawwal. Could be many months down the line. So just say 1st of Shawwal, he becomes the owner of the nisab value now for the first time ever in his life. Now that 1st of Shawwal 1444 is going to be written down, and next year 1445 1st of Shawwal, he will look and he will see how much money he possesses. If he possesses the nisab value of that day, so like I said, the nisab value is going to fluctuate all the time. It is going to be different daily, and it will be different next year as well. So you will have to look at the nisab value on that day, and if he is owner of the nisab value on that day, then he will have to give zakat. And so that is one very big mistake that all of us, majority, 99% of us have made, is we have automatically chosen our own date to be in the month of Ramadan. And on top of that, we don't even specify a date in Ramadan. We just say we'll give it any time during Ramadan. That is completely incorrect. So therefore now, if somebody, this is the first time they're learning the ruling, if they are able to track back to when the first time they became the owner of the nisab, then they should go back to that ruling. And for majority of us, it is going to be too late now. So what we should do is, we are going to choose Ramadan anyway, we should specify one exact date within Ramadan, so that next year I will calculate my zakat on the 20th of Ramadan. It shouldn't be that, okay, I'll calculate it a little bit on the 1st of Ramadan, 2nd of Ramadan, then I'll calculate a little bit later. No, the consideration should be made on one exact day, that you look at the nisab value on that exact day and you see how much you possess. You should calculate your zakat on that exact day. And this is, for example, it makes a big difference, the days as well. So for example, a person is going on holiday within the month of Ramadan, and his day is the 20th of Ramadan, like we just said, and he buys his tickets on the 15th of Ramadan. Now that is going to affect his assets, his income is going to have an effect on his zakat calculation. But for example, there was that person who has not specified a date in Ramadan, which is incorrect, and he said any time in Ramadan I'll calculate it. He's gone and he's booked his holiday on the 15th of Ramadan, and now he's giving his zakat later on. So that £1,000 that he's booked for his holiday, in reality that should be going for zakat as well. So the main thing that I was saying was that we are all in this misunderstanding, but for now, we now have understood this ruling. Now we should specify one date for Ramadan next year. Now next year Ramadan, you can choose any date now. Unless you know the day that you first became owner of the nisab, then you should go back to that. And if you don't, then now specify one day within Ramadan for next year. Another thing to bear in mind, that it makes no difference whether then your value or whatever you possess, it increases or decreases during the course of the year, and it falls slightly below the nisab or not. So for example, we said 1st of Muharram you own nisab, and you are going to check it again on 1st of Muharram 1445. So within the course of that year, if somebody's assets and wealth go below the nisab value, so for example, we're just going to stick to £385 for now. So let's just say he possesses £285. Will he have to, will that affect his year passing by? Does he have to restart his year? The answer is no. As long as it has not become completely zero, the wealth has not become completely zero, then it will have no effect. Your zakat anniversary date will stay the same, the 1st of Muharram, as long as the wealth doesn't become completely zero. And if it had become completely zero, so we said 1st of Muharram to 1st of Muharram, and on the 25th of Shawwal you now are in debt, for example, or you have nothing in your bank account, you are completely zero, then the ruling is different. Then that zakat anniversary of 1st Muharram will be cancelled, and the new zakat anniversary will be the date when you next possess the nisab value, and then you will calculate it according to that date the following year. So that hopefully should clarify how or exactly when zakat should be calculated. Yes, there is another thing about giving zakat in the month of Ramadan, even though the scholars do say it should be given immediately, and then they have given some exceptions that if a person gives it in installments, then yes. But there is one thing about calculating in the month of Ramadan, and there is one thing about giving it in the month of Ramadan. So everybody's calculation date is, in reality, it should be different. The question that was asked with this was, what is zakat due on? So we have mentioned 2-3 of these before. We've said gold and silver, regardless of whether they were bought for resale, for tijarat, for business or not. Even if they were bought for personal use, zakat will be necessary on gold and silver as well. So if a person owns 87.5 grams of pure gold, then zakat will be necessary on it, and silver is about 612.35 grams of silver. Then number 3, what else is zakat due on? Cash, money and goods in trade which exceed the value of 612.35 grams of silver. And I've also mentioned this previously as well, that if a person has these 3 things, he has gold, silver, and he has cash in golds, and individually they do not exceed the value of nisab, but collectively when you add them all together they meet the threshold and they exceed the threshold of zakat, then zakat will be necessary on the full amount. So the last time I think I mentioned, I said you have gold worth £100, you have silver worth £100, you have cash worth £200. So now if you added all of these things together, individually they do not exceed the threshold, but adding them all together they go over £385, which is the nisab at the moment. So zakat would be necessary. Besides the above, zakat is also necessary on grazing animals, and the nisab on this differs with the types of animals. Similarly, zakat is wajib on certain crops. So the nisab again differs with the types of crops as well. So those people who have land and who own animals back in the land as well, back in Pakistan, they should study this in more detail. And some of the things upon which zakat are not wajib are those goods and hawaij asliya, which are for a person's needs and necessities. So for example, a home for living in, clothes for wearing, furniture in the house, your car, your phone, utensils, household utensils, things which are considered as a luxury. So something which you do not, they're for personal use, but you do not use daily. So all of these things, there is no zakat on them. Similarly, zakat is not on pearls, rubies, diamonds, other precious stones as well. So inshallah that clarifies the answer. The time for iftar has entered. Please read the dua. Allahumma laka sumtu wa bika amantu wa alayka tawakkaltu wa ala rizqika aftartu fataqabbal minni bismillahi ala barakatillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our fasts. Ameen ya rabbal alameen.